The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. We are witnessing a dangerous moment in the history of the Sahel, and the hypocrisy is now impossible to ignore. For months, we heard the French political establishment champion the idea of, quote, European strategic autonomy, end of quote. They tell their own people that Europe must be self-dependent, that it must break free from the influence of the United States, and that it must secure its own destiny. They frame this as a noble, sovereign pursuit. But look at the contradiction. When the alliance of Sahel states, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso decide to do the exact same thing, France calls it a collapse. Take the recent comments by French Deputy Bruno Fuchs. He has outlined two scenarios for the transition in Mali. His first scenario is that the government must negotiate with armed groups, effectively forcing them to grant these groups political legitimacy and integration into the state. His second scenario, he threatens that if the government refuses to bow to these dictates, the transition will collapse because external security support from Russia will be removed. This is not analysis. This is a confession of sabotage. France and French establishment are confirming exactly what our leaders have been saying. There is a coordinated international campaign to destabilize the region. By threatening that the transition will fall, they are actively working to manufacture that failure. They are using information warfare to erode public trust, hoping to convince you that the current government is weak and that the military is failing, and that the only path forward is to return to old order of foreign dependency. Why this obsession? Why the contradiction between their desire for European independence and their need for African dependency? Follow the resources. France's economic and energy security, particularly their nuclear power grid, has long relied on their control over the raw materials of the Sahel, such as uranium from Niger and gold from Mali. A true sovereign Sahel, free from foreign military and political dictates, is a threat to the very model of influence that maintains French power. They need us to remain dependent so they can remain autonomous. This is why they have shifted to information warfare. They cannot win on the ground, so they try to win in our mind. They use their media platforms to report on the activities of the armed groups with a bias that paints the government as incapable of maintaining order.
In your opinion, what is the most likely scenario in the coming months in Mali?
There are several scenarios. I will give two to be quick. The first, if the junta and therefore President Goïta are somewhat reasonable, he opens negotiations.
There is a transition period, 3 or 6 months, with one of the military from the transition, well, we won't name anyone here, who would not be Goïta and who goes until the elections with an electoral period in 3 or 6 months. And that's where the question arises. It's in governance and in working together, the JNIM should be integrated. The FLA might be easier, but the JNIM should be integrated. The JNIM, I think, is ready to lay down arms and stop the armed struggle at the condition of participating in the political life of the country. Not to take control of Mali, but to participate in political life. So the question that will arise is, we, Europeans or French, what do we do? Do we support this transition in which the JNIM has a political role, or do we not support it? I don't have the answer, but it's a real issue of conscience and a political problem. And the second scenario is that the junta wants to resist, absolutely does not negotiate, and at some point they are in a position of weakness. The Russians negotiating their departure, etc. Contrary to what they say, but as elements show that they are considering the conditions of their departure. And then at some point, the junta will fall. If it is not negotiated, it will certainly be worse than if there were a negotiation.
Is the French government still hiding? He's a Macronist. He says out loud what his boss thinks quietly. He is already talking about the post-Assimi Goïta period, about the integration of terrorists into the daily life of Malians. He talks about a political transition led by a military figure whose name he even refuses to mention. He mentions a transitional power composed of more docile, more submissive military personnel towards Paris, accompanied by opponents from the CFR and terrorist groups from the JNIM plus FELA, who would carve up Mali according to their interests. That's the plan. When many here claim that the April 25th attacks benefited from external support, with actors having every interest in seeing Assimi fall and the AES destroyed, some still accuse us of spreading propaganda. Yet what is being said is becoming increasingly clear. Through their statements, it is clear that there are direct contacts, connections, and convergences between the terrorists, political opponents, and a well-established political component in Paris. Since April 25th, the media constantly talk about terrorist attacks in Mali and Malian losses, but almost never about the number of terrorists eliminated. But this should no longer surprise anyone. Saleh Yazi. How do you expect certain French media to insist on the losses of terrorist groups when they are already providing them with support and assistance in the media field? Why publicly attack those with whom one maintains arrangements or interests? Today, the French government no longer even talks about fighting terrorism, but now about participating in Malian political life, exactly as we saw in Syria. Hence the fact that the FLA and the CFR came to explain the day after the April 25th attacks that a Syrian scenario could occur in Mali. Such a statement is no coincidence.
We are witnessing a psychological preparation of Western and African public opinions.
Gradually make the idea acceptable that a power influenced by terrorists in the Sahel could become acceptable if it serves certain strategic interests. Regarding the Russians, this discourse resembles more a geopolitical wish than a concrete reality. It is based on the data from the 25th to believe that the Russians are withdrawing and negotiating. Publicly announcing that the Russians are negotiating their departure from Mali with the terrorists is merely a communication operation aimed at psychologically weakening those who might believe it and giving the impression that a political shift is already underway, except that it is the Malians who are engaged in this fight. Ultimately, all this shows one thing. The battle in Mali is not only military. It is also a war of influence, media narratives, and the geopolitical repositioning of France.
Parading report every warning about the future of the transition is a piece of their psychological operation. This campaign did not start yesterday. Look at the timeline since the event of April 25th, when the region faced coordinated offensives. Look back further to President Macron's visit to Nairobi, where he spoke of love and partnership, while his political proxies were working to undermine the sovereignty of our neighbors. It is all connected. Please, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, hit the notification and select all. It is all connected. Bruno Fuchs is not just speaking for himself. He is speaking for an agenda that cannot accept a Sahel that is truly independent. They are betting on propaganda to create a crisis, hoping to manufacture enough chaos to justify their return. But they are wrong. The people of the Sahel see through the contradiction. We know that the talk of collapse is the only weapon they have left. Every time they tell you we are weak, they are actually admitting that they are desperate. Desperate. The dots are connected. The agenda is exposed. The fight for our sovereignty is not a failure. It is the only path to our future. Stay vigilant. They want you to believe the lie of weakness. We know the truth of our resilience. This is the latest, and we are not backing down. This is what they spread, preaching propaganda. A majority of us, when we talk about what these people are doing, they still sit here and tell us how we are not credible. We are spreading propaganda. But what these people are discussing, telling us that our leaders in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso need to collaborate with these people in order to run this country, and they have people that can come in to take control over Mali, people that will serve their interests. What else do we need to know who is the reason to which we are having these things in Mali at the first place? They can no longer hide what they are doing. They are not telling us in the open, this is what we are doing. We are the reason to which you are having this instability in Mali. Because what this man has just said confirmed to what our leaders have been saying all this while. Now we have the evidence from the same people that our brothers and sisters in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have been accusing. It is not going to be easy for us because their resources, their life, their everything is from Africa. And that is why the African needs to unite so that together, collectively, we can protect the resources here. It's either they do this or they do that. And who told them that Russia is going to withdraw when we know Russia and China have signed a joint statement telling the world how they are ready to defend nations that are fighting for their independence, and African nations must be allowed to decide their own fate instead of people coming here to take charge because of our potentials. I don't think they heard about the joint statement. So this is how they always go around. It was the same thing they did on the 25th of April. And we see that their report is only on the strength. Their report is only on what these T groups are doing, not what our leaders are doing. The neutralization and other things, they don't talk about them. Just to make us feel that the leaders in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are doing nothing. This has been the game they have been playing for all these years. But the time has come for the African to know that we cannot allow people to tell our stories, because when we allow them to do that, they will tell the story to glorify themselves. And Macron one time said, his purpose is not to come and develop Africa or change Africa. His purpose in Africa is for the French interest, and he is right. So we must also fight to protect our interests instead of us waiting for them, like other people are calling that Russia has not been able to help us, so we need to go back to the West. You need yourself as an African. If Europe is fighting for its total liberation, you should understand as an African that you don't need anybody but yourself. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world. In France,